I'm so appreciative to be here today, and thank PW for inviting me. And thanks to Mary Kay and Josh. And Foster just explained what I was going to explain, but I thank Foster for connecting me to Mary Kay and Josh and making this event happen today. I thank you all for your courage to have a program like this for a topic that not so long ago wouldn't have been discussed at all in public or in a forum like this. It was just such a taboo, and it was better left not to talk about. So to recognize a need for this and to have it come to fruition today, I'm very appreciative. This community, this church, this parish has been literally rocked by the death of Harrison Coble. And interestingly, I had my own friendship with Harrison just through our day-to-day interactions around town. I think I was his last customer at Peter Blair on Christmas Eve. December 27th, we were exercising side by side in the fitness room, discussing everything from clothes to baseball to what exercise we were doing. And the very next day, in the evening, Foster called me and said, "I just don't know how I'm going to tell you this, but Harrison Coble took his life today." And when you get a punch in the stomach like that, it just seemed too unbelievable that I was with this energetic, affable young guy just the day before. And now to find out that he'd taken his own life, as I reflect on the work that I do and our family does every day to try to prevent this from happening. And here it was right in our own backyard once again. And yet Foster did call and say, "Well, what do we do? What do we do?" And it takes the drawing from, unfortunately, many years of experience and our own experience. Mary Kay, if you, with our own beloved Buck here on the left, obviously, with his sister Margaret and little dog Daisy. A lot of people here know our family. Buck was absolutely the most loving, caring, greatest guy who was literally loved by everyone, and he loved everyone. He was the perfect kind of son that everyone would like to have. And I always say, I think the only argument that we ever had was just concerning the length of his hair. And that was about the extent of any argument that we had. But no history of any kind of trouble, no mental illness awareness, no drugs, no alcohol, no slamming doors around the house. I won't say we were a perfect family, but together with Tyler, who's here with me, and Margaret, we just had the nice family, I guess, relatable to the Coble family, or these families that you think everything is fine, and then something tragic happens. I've just been thinking about the circle of life to some extent, as Buck and Margaret went to nursery school here. They were called Buck and Buckette when they when they were here together, and the time of such innocence and youth and promise. Who could ever foresee the future that we would lose Buck at the age of 25? Our story began on May 20th, 2012, and it was kind of family lore in our house that if something happened during the night, some creak about the house or some rustling somewhere in the house, I was kind of a chicken at heart, and I would be the first one to say, I'm going to call 911. And I'm not going to go see what it was. So it was always kind of a family joke, oh, Dad's calling 911 again. But on the night of May 20th, a rainy spring night, Tyler and I had gone to bed, and around 11:30 in the evening, there was a knock, 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 knock on the door. I'm like, Tyler, what's going on? I said, I don't think there's anything good on the other side of that knock. And so what did I do? I called 911. And I said, there's a knock at the door. Nobody should be knocking on our door at this hour. I don't know what's going on. And the 911 operator said, well, we'll dispatch someone there. And so we hung up, and a couple minutes later, the phone rang, and it was the 911 dispatcher, and said, Mr. Paul, the person at the front door was a Richmond detective. He left when there wasn't an answer, but he's on his way back to see you all now. So, of course, we were wondering, what in the world? So Tyler and I went down to the hall, and detective arrived with a colleague and came into the front hall. And we were just standing there, and he said, as a Richmond detective, this is the hardest job that I have to do. And Tyler and I just grabbed each other, like, what is at the other end of this message? And he said, your son has just taken his own life. And he expressed condolences, of course. He says, there's nothing you can do tonight. So tomorrow you need to do this, but for now, just stay at home. And as he left, he said, I think you'll find out that your son loved you very much. And that's the message he left us with. You know, it's kind of a cryptic message, one that we wouldn't know the meaning of until 9 days later. But right away, you're thrown into what do we do? And of course, we, planned a funeral service at St. James's Church with wonderful minister Randy Hollerith. And as we planned that service, he said to me, Ray, how do you want to handle the elephant in the room? And I said, well, Randy, by that elephant, do you mean the way Buck died? And he said, yeah, how do you want to handle that? Do you want to talk about it? And we said, Randy, if we don't talk about the way Buck died, how will we ever talk about the way he lived? So from the very beginning, our whole family decided that we would talk about the way Buck died. And it's very liberating when you do that. And we hope the Cobles in their openness will find the same thing. And now just to kind of complete the story on the cryptic message, the detective gave us, it was Memorial Day weekend of all things, so all Buck's things were all in detective lockup. And on Memorial Day, the detective came up to our door and said, I can't believe these things haven't been delivered to you from the city, but I'm on duty today. I see they're still here. You need to see this. And included was Buck's note that he left for us. And it was just very classic Buck. He just had a way with words and thoughtfulness. And he left a note that we can say by heart. And it said, I have the most amazing family and friends. I have loved. I have seen the world. Thank you all for my amazing life. And signed it, Ray M. Buck Paul III. And that was his message. And Randy Hollerith said to us, that is the most unbelievable suicide note I've ever seen. he meant to leave you all, knowing you're going to feel devastated, but he wanted to leave you with a positive message. So I share that story. As a matter of fact, it's the first time I think we've ever really publicly said or shared with everybody what the note said, but over time you're able to do things that you didn't used to be able to do. And so that kind of completed our story and encouraged us to get involved with suicide prevention. And Foster really said everything I wanted to say about my involvement with the AFSP. Yes, I've been recently elected chair, which I'm very honored for, in memory of Buck and the family. And my wife Tyler is with us today, and daughter Margaret is in Wilmington, North Carolina. Buck's grandmother, my mother-in-law, Peggy Bird. I mean, our whole family mission is now about suicide prevention and supporting those who have lost someone to suicide. So I'm just going to walk through some slides now that are everything that we've learned through AFSP. This is a lot of our AFSP work, and it's an unbelievable organization that does incredible work, and I just kind of just marvel at everything that we do. I'll just want to talk about some suicide risk factors of what can increase someone's likelihood to take their own lives, and some warning signs, and what we can all do to try to protect people from the risk of suicide. First of all, there are about 48,000 deaths a year to suicide, and it's the second leading cause of death, particularly in the demographic of 15 to 25-year-olds. It's the second leading cause of death. And it is a preventable death, and this we do know through research. And interestingly, AFSP just did a poll, a Harris poll, and now I think it's 98% of Americans feel that suicide deaths are preventable. So there's a real change in thinking in the American public. It's an issue that, as we see here, it affects communities. A loss like Harrison's recent loss, it affects families, neighborhoods, schools, churches, just the mix of everybody here today. We see the impact that suicide loss can have on a community. We do a lot of research, what makes someone take their own lives, and there's no one singular cause, but it's usually a convergence of stressor issues and health and mental health issues that come together at the same time that will just give someone a feeling of such hopelessness and despair that they don't see any other way out. So it's a combination of things that come together at one time. And we also know from research that generally mental health issues are related to suicide. Normally there's a good chance that mental health issues are related to the suicide. The risk factors can be really characterized by conditions related to health, historical, and environmental. The health factors, as these are listed here, and you can read, with depression being the most known and most likely cause of leading someone or increasing someone's risk of suicide. But anxiety disorders, personality disorders, there are a number of health issues that can be increasing the risk of suicide. And there are other health factors too, chronic pain, head injuries. We see that a lot these days with football players and head injuries, and those things can be ongoing and lingering and lead to suicides. Historical facts, looking at someone as this person, is there a history of suicide in the family? Childhood abuse and sexual abuse in childhood years can be a leading factor in increasing someone's risk for suicide. Environmental factors. Does a person have access to lethal means? Do they work in a gun shop? Do they work in a pharmacy? Do they work in a hospital? Do they have access to a bridge? Do they have access to a car? There are just any number of means that a person can use to take their own life. So you just look at those things, and is there something from a prevention-wise, can you take those things out of somebody's life? Stressful events. If there's a history of someone being harassed, if there's a history of, say, if someone is unemployed, someone is having financial problems, someone is having legal problems, someone's being bullied, those are all stressful environmental risk factors that you need to be aware of. So we do need a culture where everyone starts to think about mental health. And we need to think about mental health in the same way that we think about physical health. It's believed that over half the people who have mental health issues are not seeking help for that mental health issue. And if we get those people to treat mental health like they do physical health, that's a lot of potential opportunity for reducing risk of suicide in a lot of people. Just as I talked about risk factors that can be lifelong risk factors that influence a person or builds up over time that increases their likelihood of risk for suicide, there are also a lifetime group of protective factors that serve as a protection of increasing risk for suicide. And those are certainly mental health, if someone gets mental health care early and on time. But family and community support is a big protective factor. And oftentimes, someone whose risk for suicide is increasing, they've maybe lost in their minds their connection to family, community, whatever their support system might be. Something has changed in their minds, the judgment of that support that they have. And it's in their mind only, but they see that or perceive that. So it's really important that if you know someone who's at risk, that you keep galvanizing that support for that person. Mental health, making it a priority. Everyone here, you should take away from this, if you're not treating mental health as a priority, if you're not treating it on the same level as your physical health, then you should start doing that when you go to your doctor or your general practitioner. You should make sure that they're doing the mental health screening. I hope that that's what everyone finds when they go to the doctor these days. It's interesting, just a little side story. Our daughter Margaret, when she moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, and found a new doctor, and she, in getting her examination, the doctor, in a very cursory way, went through a list of screening questions. And Margaret called and she said, Dad, the doctor was just checking the boxes, and wasn't really even looking at me to how I was answering. And this was when Margaret, needed help after losing Buck, and, depressions can be an issue. And she said at the end of it, I said, Doctor, I'm sorry, I just have to tell you, I don't think you did a very good job with that. She said, I mean, I want to talk about some of these things, and you look like you were just trying to tick a box and say everything was okay. And what should happen is the right box should get ticked, that she needs some help and she should get red flagged, and that immediate assistance she'd be pointing in the right direction. But doctor, and we still talk about that. I think, she was so brave of her to do that. And she said, if I could just, teach that one doctor, maybe that doctor's going to save somebody's life by listening to the person better. So mental health, finding what's best for the individual, from medication to psychotherapy, a combination of the two. They're different medical remedies. These are things that you would like to think are somewhat common sense, but related to mental health. They are also important, and Tyler and I and Margaret aren't perfect in the way we do these, but we definitely have realized that each of these things is really important to our well-being. Nice exercise, sleep, healthy diet, stress management. I would throw in there staying busy, stay involved, interact with people. But they are all really very important for our mental health care. So what can we all do? And that's the question and the takeaway that we all want to have. Having a conversation. That is a very important ingredient, component to lower the suicidal ideology or risk of any individual. If you notice someone struggling, part of it all is kind of the language that's used related to suicide, and it seems like a small thing maybe that most people don't notice on a day-to-day basis, but I was the first person to say someone committed suicide. We are working to change the language of committed suicide because it has such a negative connotation. If you think about it, if we want to present suicide as a mental health issue, you don't commit a heart attack. You get committed to an asylum or an institution. So changing the vernacular and the way it's phrased in a more medical light is just a way to change everyone's thinking of suicide as a mental health issue, and putting it on par with physical issues. So we want to watch for warning signs, and if you see someone struggling, you want to reach out to them and then seek help. And some of the warning signs come in 3 different categories: really, talk, behavior, and mood. And talk, if people are talking in desperation or talk about ending their own lives, they don't have a reason to live, burden to others. If you hear this kind of language coming from someone, and you also take that in combination of the risk factors that we talked about earlier, the risk factors build up over a period of time, but the warning signs become more a measure of immediacy of the problem or the issue. So the warning signs need to be taken very seriously as a time of the moment, and then consider the person's life in totality to say, is it a combination of the risk factors and now these clear warning signs. Behavior is very interesting. One of Buck's very best friends, who had their first child and named him after Buck. He, after about 2 years after we lost Buck, he got in touch with us and said, "Mr. and Miss Paul, I need to get together and talk with you all." So we said, "Yeah, Mark." And so we were with him and his parents, and Mark said, "This has just been on my mind." He said, "Buck was always the first person to want to go out when I came into town. I'd call and say, 'Buck, come on, let's get everybody together and we're going to go out.' And the last couple times that I came to town, I'd say, 'Buck, come on, let's go out.' And he said, 'No, I don't really feel like it tonight.' And Mark said, that just was not Buck. He was always the person who wanted to go out and get everybody together." And he said, "I've been thinking about that all this time. And why didn't I ask him, what's wrong?" And he said, I didn't. And it just sticks with me because it's just talk. This is where you need to recognize that something is wrong with a friend or loved one and not being afraid to ask them what's wrong. And then mood to go along with the other warning signs. Is the person just acting so differently and so out of character? And, how have their habits changed? Are they, the school grades suffering when they always had good grades, or people being late to whatever it might be, or just not engaged and involved with life and normal activities as you've always known them to be? You've just got to notice those change in your friends and loved ones. And just trust your gut, trust your instinct. Don't assume that someone else is going to ask your friend or loved one that question. Ask them yourself. If you see something is not right, ask them. The person will appreciate it. When you talk to the person, keep in mind you can ask the question. This is something people always say or think that you can't do, but ask them, are you thinking about taking your own life? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? And again, our research shows that can be a real release and relief to the person, that they can talk about it, and you want them to talk about it. You want to explain what they're thinking, and you want to give, of course, positive reinforcement, but it doesn't plant the negative seed that's going to make them take their life. That is not going to happen. And again, relating to our own family, we learned that, and it was very helpful that we learned that. Margaret being 4 hours away from us and worrying about how she was doing, we would ask her. And she knew it was okay to ask because the family learned all of this together. And we could just ask each other, are you okay? And we don't have to do it these days like we used to, but we know that it's okay to ask, how you feeling? And this comes up too. It's Tyler and I didn't really expect to be go-to resources, but we felt an obligation when people come to us to be able to give informed, intelligent advice. Tyler is particularly good at it. She's read and researched, and she just knows so much. Just recently, we had someone call us and say, I have a work colleague whose husband says he's going to take his own life. What do we do? And we can say what to do. Stay with that person. Make sure there are no lethal means around. Call 988. Take them to the emergency room. But these are the things you do, very clear, but don't leave the person alone, for example. So here we are at 988. This is something that AFSP, probably one of our best works of advocacy in Washington, was getting the 988 hotline passed last year, and it just went up live in July. It's something that we've been working on for many years, and everyone should have this in their phones now, because if you don't need it, somebody you're with might need it sometime. Very important to know that you can call this, and every community has their own staffing of the 988 operators. If you're military, you automatically get sent to someone who's an expert in dealing with military, and still building up staffing and training of the 988 hotlines around the country. So about AFSP, our mission, save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. We're just the go-to organization these days for when there are any kind of high-profile deaths, from Robin Williams, Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade. Unfortunately, it's those high-profile deaths that bring more attention to suicide. But with COVID and brought a whole new attention and focus to mental health, and really thrust our organization so much more in the limelight. And we've had incredible growth, which is it's a sad thing, but it's a good thing. But because there's so much more attention to it, and we've become really the leading go-to organization to talk about mental health, suicide prevention. We have many things. I want to make sure everybody sees Shirley Ramsey, who's here. We're joined by the loss of our son. She lost her son Jackson around a little bit before we lost Buck. And Shirley, tireless worker for suicide prevention, and she worked hard until she founded the chapter of AFSP here in Virginia. And she's here manning the table today with a lot of our literature. We just have on our website, afsp.org, it's an unbelievable treasure trove of anything you want to find related to mental health, suicide prevention. If you want to know how to talk to a demographic group of teens, of seniors, of LGBTQ, we have it all, and it's all done by researchers, scientists, psychiatrists. The best brains in the world have put together these materials. We really, a big part of what we do is loss and healing. Again, it's been our family. We all support each other at AFSP when you're around people all the time who have lost loved ones. We talked about 988 and our advocacy. We're proud of the work we do at state and national level. We have walks throughout the country. Most people said that walks were dead for raising money for nonprofit organizations or health things, but our walks have exploded, and there are campus walks and walks all across the country, and they're really successful. One of the things that we're doing that I'm particularly proud of, because it's so different, is our Seize the Awkward advertising campaign. It's in conjunction with the Ad Council and the JED Foundation, which is a foundation that focuses on mental health on college students. But the three of us go together to make the Seize the Awkward campaign. And I do have a video or two I want to show you, It's Easy Awkward is targeted these young adults, 16 to 24-year-olds, and there's something that, well, most of us in this room are going to go like, ooh, that's kind of, they're a little edgy, but they're targeted and geared toward young people. They have people in the videos that they would recognize. And this one is just came out Christmas time. It's focused on realizing that suicide, crosses all demographic boundaries, and we as an organization have a much broader outreach now to African American community, the LGBTQ community, the Hispanic community, and making really successful inroads to building our organization to support all demographic groups. And this is a video or a It's Easy Awkward ad that really is intended for Black and brown audiences or kids. And so let's play this.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you wanna talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
And the next video actually features Caleb Williams, who's the Heisman Trophy winner this year. Caleb Williams, who's a Heisman Trophy winner this year, and he's a mental health advocate and has partnered with us, AFSP.
Quarterback Caleb Williams, he announced last week that he is making a move from Oklahoma to the University of Southern California.
He's in a USC uniform, but finally it's official.
When the stadium lights are dimmed, when the cameras stop flashing, when the pads are off, the pressure sinks in and it's just me in a world of expectation. Nobody can carry that alone. I went to college on my first year and I actually was taking 11 classes or 10 classes, one or the other. I wasn't in the position that I wanted to be, which was actually on the field and playing because I didn't play the first half of the season. And so when that happened, it was probably one of the more tougher times in my life. And I was actually a meme last year. On one occasion was good and one occasion was not so good. One occasion was Texas, and where we won, and then the other occasion was where we lost to Oklahoma State. And the sad moment, I kind of turned off social media, Twitter, Instagram, anything like that, and focus on, like I said, what I like to do, and then my support system, my team, my teammates, and then what I mean by my support system is my either close friends, really close friends, my family members, or my mentors that have been there and know me. Pressure doesn't have to be carried alone. What if we came together as a team? Embrace talking openly about our mental health.
If we reached out, checked in.
Seize the awkward.
Imagine what we could do.
I start the conversation about a friend's mental health by simply asking them, how are you doing? Whether that's a text, a phone call, or even in person. And if I get that canned, I'm good response, I sit there patiently, look them in the eye and say, bro or sis, like, how are you really doing? And typically they open up and allow me in their corner and I sit there and listen to them and affirm who they are in the circumstance, that no matter what's going on, no matter what's happening, they're gonna get through it.
I feel great being supported. It's almost like when you take a deep breath in and you're holding it and all these pressures just surround you. But then when you have a friend in your corner, you can take that exhale, that breath out and know that the weight's lifted off of your shoulders. So at the end of the day, I want to be there for someone else because I know what it's like to feel alone. So just know,
If you want to talk,
I'm here.
I'm here.
we're a team.
To learn more about getting the conversation started, visit seizetheawkward.org.
So that has been just so meaningful that young people, and particularly when you have young people that are well known to speak out and advocate for mental health. And in closing, I just there's one more video that I just particularly like. It's a new one that we've done, and it's on TikTok, and over 60 million people have seen it. And it's really this is one of our young scientists at AFSP, and it's intended, I think, to leave us with a good message.
Processing grief after a loss is extremely complex. And a big fear is that if you're not thinking of your loved one all the time, that you're somehow erasing them or letting them go or forgetting them. And that simply is not true. One thing we've learned from research is that just because you're not thinking about your loved one all the time does not mean that you're not processing your grief. Unconsciously, you and your brain are still healing, even if you're going about your day normally, and even if you're laughing with your friend. Ultimately, healing isn't letting go of someone, it's learning how to live with the loss.
So that concludes my presentation. And I know, I apologize. I told Mary Kay, I think I'm going to be a little long, but it is just 1 o'clock for, but any questions, please.
Are there more statistics on male versus female suicides? I was surprised one of your first slides referenced the 10 to 35 age group. So I'm generally under the impression that a lot of teenagers suffer with depression, but I'm wondering if there are just more instances of male versus female.
So the question is, are there more instances of male versus female when it comes to suicide? And yes, it's males are more likely and are the higher percentage of suicide. A lot of times by the means that they have are more aggressive than girls, ladies will do. Guns. Boys, men are more likely to use a gun, which is the leading tool.
A lot of concern about social media and the impact on teenagers of social media.
Yeah, absolutely so. We do a lot of research in that area. And I would just say too, Kathy, on the boy versus girl thing, suicide ticked up a little bit last year, 2021. And the main areas and demographics, so where the numbers ticked up, were young guys, and the girls level stayed the same, but boys ticked up, went up. Social media is such a negative impact and influence, and it shows more time people on the screens, the more time they stay up during the night on their computers. Everybody's world looks better than their own, and it really has very negative consequences. I just was interacting with a dad who recently lost their son, and he said, if I could follow the advice that I'm given now, no child 16 under should be allowed to have a phone or tablet in their bedroom, in the bathroom, anywhere. Just don't let them use it, because his son was just a victim took his own life related to online activity, and they found that out.
I think your title, Talk Saves Lives, is so important because it's generally my observation that women have an advantage. We know each other, and it's easier for us to take our trash with a friend, be able to vent. I think we have an advantage over men in that respect. I think it's harder for men to do that. but I think women have more of a capability just among friends, being able to say what's on your mind, and I just call it taking out your trash. And everybody used to do that. And if you listen to somebody's trash, then that means when it's time for you, somebody needs to reciprocate and do that for you. But that helps clear the air and, clear your mind and give you a bit more of a support system so that you don't feel so restricted about being able to talk about your feelings and get things out.
So you think girls, ladies just have the ability and do talk to each other much more than boys and men. And there's no doubt that boys and young guys like Buck and that demographic, they don't want to talk and they won't talk about mental health. I mean, we'll never know about Buck, but now he definitely had something going on up in his head. Certainly depression, whatever, but as our grief counselor and clergy told us that, Buck did not want you to know. And that's typical of a young guy. He did not want you all to know. He didn't want you to know why he was living. And by the note he left, he didn't want to leave you with a depressing, somber note where he would leave you at that. So it's much more a male characteristic of not talking about it, which is really changing. You take someone like Caleb Williams. There's a whole host of young athletes. Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, is a big mental health advocate and speaker about suicide prevention. They're just more and more athletes, particularly, and entertainers. We have at AFSP a lot of collaborations going on with really very famous entertainers. Ashley Judd is going to be the recipient of an award that we have at a fundraising event in New York in May. Ashley Judd, as everybody knows, I think she lost her mom, Naomi Judd, part of the Judds, a few months back, and she died by suicide. And Ashley Judd, there's a law in Tennessee that allows kind of an open book. The press can find out how the person died. And there was a big feeding frenzy by the press. They wanted to get a hold of how she died and the details of it and all. And Ashley Judd didn't know how to handle it and actually got connected with us at AFSP. And our people, our chief medical officer, helped her write a letter to the press in Tennessee saying all the counterproductive things that would happen if that was all put out in the public. That was part of the contagion things, that if there's a graphic depiction of suicides that are put out on the press, whatever, it can have a very, very negative consequence if you kind of either glamorize it or insinuate how to do it. And the letter and presentation was so well done as presented by Ashley Judd. The press actually respected and backed off. And that just was so meaningful. And now we also collaborate with Netflix because they had a show, 13 Reasons Why, about suicide. And in it, there were things that we thought were completely inappropriate of representing suicide, and took issue with Netflix saying this is not healthy. You can't do this. And now we helped them rewrite, and they redid part of that first season. And now everything that Netflix does related to mental health and suicide, they partner with us to make sure that the wording, the scripts, and everything is appropriate. Yes.
Seize the Awkward videos on that website that you have?
I wish they are their own entity because there are so many of them. Go to seizetheawkward.com and you can see the whole history of all the different Seize the Awkward ads, and some of them are 15 seconds, some are 30. That one was a minute. But they're They're very, very good. And some of them have a little bit of humor, but they all are just teaching young people how to recognize that their friends are in trouble and how to ask them if they're in trouble. And so you take that awkward situation, that awkward moment, you seize that moment, and you ask your friend or loved one. And I will just say, keep in mind, a lot of what I've been saying is talking about your friend or family members recognizing those warning signs and risk factors, but everybody as individual needs to really think, hey, is this me? Do I have this kind of warning sign? Do I have these risk factors? Do I need to be talking to someone? So look at it on an individual basis as well as if you're looking at it for a friend or loved one. Yes, Mary.
Ray, I'd just like to say, because of Shirley, the sadness in my son's class, they all graduated 2004, Douglas Freeman, and Shirley's dear son. But I really think with the men, it deals with stress because, oh, I couldn't get that job. Oh, well, I'm not qualified to do that. I think stress has so much to do with it. And I think mental health is, if you don't have good insurance coverage, it costs a fortune. You know,
So we
parents that I'm involved with, I mean, not involved with, but it's just
so
it's
the health
sad that we've lost 3 young men in the class of 2004.
Yes, it is, and I'm just just in the past month, 2 months here, our community has lost all ages. You know, I've lost friends young and our age to suicide. So from a cost perspective, that's a lot of the advocacy work we do at state capitals and in Washington, anything that we can do advancing mental health bills that make mental health more mainstream again, like physical health and being supported by insurance. And we're working hard, and it's getting more mainstream. Because we don't want it to be cost to be a deterrent for getting help. Anybody else?
I guess just along with that, there are some therapists who do sliding scales based on income, so that's another thing that you can recommend to someone if cost is an issue.
Thank you. Well, again, I certainly thank everyone for being here and being so attentive and paying attention to just what is a real epidemic and a sad one to see us lose any age people. But thank you all for being here today.